Hey, welcome to Dad's Space. The final frontier. This is Dad's Space. If you found us by accident, congratulations. Good job. If you're coming back because you've heard an episode or somebody sent you here, welcome. This is Dad's Space. It's a podcast for dads by dads. You're a dad. I'm a dad. Maybe you're not a dad. What if you're like a secret spy listening to this podcast? Ooh, spooky. Anyways, I'm talking today about empty nest. I am an empty nester and I wanted to share some thoughts with you. You're on Dad's Space on the empty nest. Ready? Here we go. So I did an episode of Living the Next Chapter, and I've talked about this before here, but I wanted to jump back in on this again because as an empty nester, I don't think that this topic is covered enough. And there's one part that really I've been thinking about lately as Jen and I are dealing with a whole new season of life with an empty house. It's just the two of us. We've been throwing ourselves into work and being busy and all that stuff. We're coming up to the end of the year and, it's just busy all around, busy for all of us all the time. And it makes us, in the busyness, it helps us to avoid the conversation about our empty nest. So I'm creating this as kind of a podcast to myself. You're allowed to listen in, but this is more for me. And what I'm working through right now is the understanding that I'm coming to realize, and through reading and through podcasts that I listen to and talking to great people like I'm going to be talking to today here on the podcast, Jim Burns, an author, a little clips I'm going to share with you from his podcast episode with me on Living the Next Chapter and a little bit from his book. But the whole season of life of empty nesters. If you're a young dad or a soon-to-be dad or you have teenage kids, this might not be something you're thinking about as much as I am living it myself with my 3 kids now moved out of the house and on their own and doing their thing. It's a big change, and it's sobering in a way. And the one thing I think that I'm really trying to work through is how men and women, how we respond to the empty nest. Now, speaking from my point of view as dad, there's a few things that I see. As the children leave the home and my kids grow up and leave, I see a sense of freedom in the sense that I'm not driving my kids around and I don't have to live by their school schedule and their friend schedule and sleepovers and drive me here, drive me there, and all of that. I see freedom in the sense that that's a part of my day and my week that I don't have to invest in anymore because they're on their own. So I see some freedom in the empty nest. But when I compare that to how my wife responds to the empty nest, for Jennifer, when the kids are here, when they were small and growing up in our home, there was routine. There was things that happened on a certain day and time and day of the week, and it was all around a schedule: school, after-school activities, lessons, all that stuff. So we shape our lives as parents around our children to give them the most opportunities possible to live a great life, experience many things, and enjoy all the things that life has, like a holiday. For the 5 of us, Jen and myself and the 3 kids, to get in the van and go to a cottage or go dirt bike riding. We love riding dirt bikes. Things like that. Like, those things are all now gone. And again, going back to me, yes, there's freedom, but there's loss as well. But for my wife, Jen, there's a loss of structure and a loss of being the center of our world. Everyone revolved around Jen as mom and as wife. Here in the home, everyone kind of circled around her. We were in her orbit. She kind of held everything together and did an amazing job of helping us all get to work, get to school, get to wherever we need to be. And that's what she does really well. And I'm amazed at her ability to juggle work. At one point, she was working 3 different part-time jobs at the same time, sometimes on the same day, working 3 different jobs, which has now turned into a full-time job, which is great for her. But her commitment for her family and to put herself last. Now that the kids are gone, our schedule is completely up in the air, and we're wrestling with this, to be quite honest. We're really wrestling with what normal is now for just the 2 of us. It's a very odd time. So I reached out to Jim Burns because I got his books. I listened to them on Audible, and I love listening to audiobooks. It's a great way to consume books when you're doing something else. You can rewind it if you miss a part. You can play it again. And I wanted to add a little clip from Jim Burns' book about the empty nest, which he wrote. And I'll just put a little clip of this here to show you. And then when I come back, I'm going to set up just a little bit of my interview with Jim so you can hear his perspective on what it feels like as an empty nester and kind of the reason and the rationale behind why he wrote his book. So here's a little bit of a clip from the audio version of his book from Jim Burns. And I wanted to share with you so you could hear it and kind of get a sense of what Jim is sharing with us. His book is called Finding Joy in the Empty Nest. And again, it's available wherever you get books. And then on Audible, you can listen to the audiobook, and it is amazing. So I would strongly recommend, if you are curious about the empty nest, if you're getting close to the empty nest, if you're living the empty nest right now, this is the one thing. And I wanted to kind of share this with you. So here's a clip from the book. And again, after the clip, I'll come back and just set up my chat with Jim about his writings and about kind of the backstory of finding joy in the empty nest. Here you go. Here's a little clip from the book.
But Kathy wasn't the only one who discovered she needed to reinvent herself. I had some work to do in that department myself. For many people, the empty nest brings other issues to the forefront, such as being caught in the middle of caring for aging parents, caring for needy adult children, health issues, menopause, and changing roles in marriage. Sometimes in-law issues get complicated, as do the problems of finances and future retirement. The list can quickly become a long one. Our road undoubtedly will be full of twists and turns and some unexpected thorns, but even with all that life naturally throws at us, I'm convinced that if you take just a little time to prepare, the empty nest years can be your best years. Many individuals spend more time in the empty nest than with their children in the home. Whether you are single, married, or in a blended family, the empty nest brings both the joy of victory and the agony of some defeat. You make mid-life course corrections. If you are married, you once again gaze into each other's eyes, as you did before you had kids, though those eyes may have more wrinkles and your faces may be fuller than they were 2 decades ago. Unless you did an amazing job preparing for the empty nest, and most of us didn't, you may be looking at a stranger who is going through their own identity crisis. I've spent my entire adult life researching, speaking on, and writing about the values of strong marriages, confident parents, and empowered kids. Yet the empty nest took me by surprise. It was much more difficult than I'd thought it would be. And if this makes any sense, much better, too. I've told friends that I wrote this book out of my need, desperation, to reinvent and recalibrate parts of my life, my marriage, and even my relationships with my adult children. Very quickly, the research for this book became personal because I found myself reading for my own benefit before I could write or speak one sentence to others. To be candid, some of the writing on this subject seemed a bit trite, even shallow. Plant a garden, join a bridge club, and volunteer at the hospital. These are great ideas, but as I listened to the people around me, I learned that empty nesting is more about a sense of loss and the need to find new purpose and passion while changing the relationships we once had with our children. It's possible that your best years are ahead of you, and how you choose to live will determine the outcome. I believe that most games are won in the second half, and that you, no doubt, have a beautiful, though possibly not easy, road ahead of you.
So that was Finding Joy in the Empty Nest, Jim Burns. Again, there'll be a link to the book in the show notes. And yeah, so that was a little snippet from the audio version of the book. But then I had the book. I reached out to Jim. I didn't know if he would have time to come on my podcast. He was one of my earlier guests on Living the Next Chapter, one of my 7 podcasts now that we have out there in the world. But yeah, livingthenextchapter.com has all the information for that. But Jim came on the podcast. I was so thrilled to have him on because we talked about this book, and he shared a little bit about the behind the scenes. And I posed a question to him about how do we prepare for the empty nest? And I was really happy to hear his response. So this is from a clip from the full episode. And if you want, there's a link in the show notes to hear the complete episode with Jim on Living the Next Chapter. So go over there and listen to the entire thing, and just click the link and you'll go straight to it. But again, this is all in my mind and in my heart today for my wife, Jen, for myself, and anybody that's kind of feeling the way we are, that living this next phase of our life, that we need to find joy in this empty nest season and look to the things that are going to fill us up again now that there's some empty space in our home. So here's my little clip from the interview with Jim, and I hope you enjoy this, and we'll jump back here at the end and close off. Thanks for listening. Here you go. What would your message be to somebody who is on the doorstep of an empty nest?
Yeah.
How do we prepare for this?
Well, first of all, I think we should, you answered it, Dave. I think we have to prepare a little bit. What we did with hundreds of people that we talked to and I wrote this book during COVID, so it was on mainly Zoom calls with loads of people, me asking questions, what's going on, is we realized that people hadn't prepared for the empty nest. And so once their kids were gone, they were preparing, getting their kids out of the house, going to college, going to the workforce, whatever, but they were doing that well, a lot of them. But all of a sudden it's quiet and they look up and they go, wow, even in a marriage, we buried some things under the mat. So, wow, gosh, we've got to deal with that. We have to reinvent our life.
Yeah.
And I think when you do it, when you're already in the empty nest, it's harder than if you kind of have been thinking about it just a little tiny bit. It's kind of, then you're preparing for it, if you would. But we found a lot of people didn't prepare. And that was a harder thing.
It's great to have access to authors and hear from them. I really appreciated Jim being on Living the Next Chapter. So again, if you're in a marriage situation, you're married to your spouse and your kids are now out of the house, you have this opportunity to bond. And I love the fact that we're talking about the fact that we will probably spend more time together in the empty nest than we did when we had a full home of our kids being here. The chances of us being together for a longer time together without the kids is probably a real reality, and I'm looking forward to that. And as much as I miss my kids, I do enjoy reconnecting with Jen and not having to fight for each other's attention, and the food that we buy stays in the fridge. And there's some joy there, right? But again, it's trying to recognize that even though I see this as an advantage Jen, for the most part, does see the advantage, but she more defaults to the loss of structure, the loss of being needed, wanted, required, where the kids aren't here and those demands are gone. And she's got to find her place in the world. And as a husband and a spouse, that's our responsibility to help and help our spouse find their way. And I think for the moms out there and the wives listening, your husband is celebrating the freedom of being able to go golfing or work in the garage or pick up a hobby. But at the same time, speaking as a dad, there's an ache that we fill or try to fill with activity. And there's just this longing and desire to go back to the day when all the kids were tucked in bed at night, under one roof. You knew as a parent where your kids were. And those days are gone. And it's not easy. It's not easy. So enjoy your kids. Kiss them on the foreheads when they're sleeping. Just sit on the side of their bed when they're fast asleep and late at night, and just look at them. Soak it in. Store up those memories while you have them. Because when the nest is empty, those memories are hard to scrounge together. Take care of each other. And I think the one thing I'd like to say as well is for the single parents out there who are experiencing empty nest. If you listen to Jim's episode on Living the Next Chapter, again, the link's in the show notes, he actually speaks directly to you as a single parent with an empty nest. I have Jen. Jen has myself. But if it's just you and your children are gone and the house is very empty, Jim actually speaks directly to you and has some really amazing words of comfort and exhortation and encouragement for you. I really encourage you to listen to that episode as well. But I'm thinking of you as well. And I'm wishing you all the strength, because as a single parent, I think you give so much to your kids, so much to your home, and you put yourself out there in a way that many people can't. You are a hero. And even though it's quiet in your home right now, and the noise, the clatter, and the clutter is gone, I want you to know that your kids celebrate you and think about you and all the things you did for them. And in time, they will come to love and appreciate you more as they realize how difficult it is to be an adult in this crazy world that we live in. So you've done so much to get them to this point. Congratulations. As a single parent, you've done an amazing job, and celebrate yourself. And thanks for listening to Dad Space. And one thing I really love about Dad Space is I get to look at the numbers, and I get to look at some basic information about who's listening to this podcast. And I was astonished to see that we're now around 75% of the listening audience of Dad Space are females. Whether you're a mom, single mom, a grandmother, 75% of you listening are female. 25% are dads. This is Dad Space. I was shocked and encouraged that you find value in this. And if I can help you in any way, as a dad, as a host of this podcast, if there's a topic that I can help you with, is that if there's a guest you'd love to hear on this podcast, head over to dadspace.ca, click the little microphone icon, send me a voice message or an email, and let me know how I can serve you. That's why I'm doing this podcast. And I hope that it brings value to you, it encourages you, and gives you joy. Thanks for being part of Dad Space. I really do appreciate you for making time for this. Enjoy your day and find joy in your empty nest. Thanks for listening to Dad Space today. Go check us out on all of our social media, YouTube, all that great stuff. You can find us as Dad Space Podcast. Real simple. Dad Space Podcast, whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, even YouTube. Email us, dadspacepodcast@gmail.com. We're always looking for great guests to come on the podcast. If you have any feedback for us, let us know here at Dad Space. Looking forward to connecting with you on the next episode, right here of Dad Space. Follow us on your podcast app for more. Cheers. To you, Dad. Thank you.